Hey, everybody. Welcome into the podcast. We are back with another special bonus episode.
Whoa, bro, you're like, you're starting to gun in on my territory.
I was trying to sound like you a little. Here, let me read it as flat as I can.
Okay, that's better.
Another special bonus episode.
No, you can go flatter than that.
Another special bonus episode.
Bonus episode.
Today we are going to be previewing season 5, which starts on November 1st. We just had a very brief break in between seasons this time around, Brad, but I think even though it's a briefer break than normal, it's actually like a seismic shift in our podcast here. We're doing something that we've never done before on the podcast in season 5, and I'm excited to tell Film and Whiskey Nation all about it.
Bob, can I be honest with you for a sec?
Please do.
I feel like this episode is just kind of an excuse for you and I to get together and drink a little bit of whiskey.
Yep, 100%. But
Okay.
I'm trying to sell it to the people listening.
Oh,
So
yeah,
you got to help me out a little bit here, man.
Yeah, season 5, man. It's going to be so good. I'm so excited to tell you about it.
I am excited about season 5, though. I really do think this is going to be really fun.
Bro, it's going to be a blast, man. I'm really pumped.
And while we tell you about season 5, we're actually trying 2 whiskeys today, and they couldn't be any more different from each other. So they're definitely not encroaching on each other's turf at all. We're trying Umiki Japanese whiskey, and we're trying Traverse City Whiskey Company Michigan Apple. They're not even from the same region of the world, let alone the same flavor profile, Brad.
They might be almost exactly opposite of each other on the world.
I do kind of hope they end up tasting almost exactly alike now.
Yeah, that would be honestly just really impressive.
Yeah, I think so. So we're coming off season 4 here. We just finished up our bracket challenge where we named The Two Towers the winner. I almost said Beauty and the Beast because that was my winner. It was not the winner in terms of the bracket challenge. So,
Bob, you want to know the honest truth?
yeah.
You know how like when you're like up against a tough decision and then you make the decision and your gut immediately tells you like whether or not you like that decision?
Oh, I regret what we did.
Yeah, as soon as the Coin of Destiny landed on Two Towers, I was kind of like, I wish Beauty and the Beast had won.
I do too. Can we just say
Yeah.
like Beauty and the Beast unofficial winner of season 4?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
The Two Towers, hashtag not my bracket champ.
Not my bracket champ.
Well, we will be doing a bracket challenge at the end of season 5, but we're going to get there in a little bit of a different fashion. So, to this point, we've been essentially looking at movies that come from this master list of movies that I put together for Brad a long time ago when we were just kind of shooting the shit as friends. And I said, hey, man, if you want to start watching classic movies, I would kind of start here. And we expanded that list. There's been additions and subtractions over the years.
You said start here with a list of like 200 movies, Bob.
Hey, man. I see nothing wrong with that.
Well, so far it's been almost 3 years, and I'm like, I don't know, what are we, 150 movies in?
Well, I think, 32 times 4. So we're 128 movies in right now. We're
At the very least.
we're making headway here.
Yeah, we sure are. And guys, we're just really pumped to tell you about season 5. Bob kind of has already mentioned it a little bit. But the concept behind season 5 is that Bob's half, we're just kind of continuing the same old, just movies that he picks. But he actually gave me full reign over 15 movies that I got to choose.
Well,
season 5 is going to be great, guys.
I do want to clarify a little bit here. It's not quite same old on my end. Like the selection is still, I'm still picking movies. But what we decided to do for season 5 is to pick movies that we normally wouldn't talk about on a quote unquote classic movie podcast. So it could be movies that we know objectively might not be that great, or it could just be like movies we haven't seen in a long time that we want to revisit, movies that meant a lot to us as kids or as teenagers, just things that are near and dear to our hearts, or things that we just have always wanted to talk about, and this gives us the excuse to do it. I've got a couple of those kind of movies on my list. So Brad and I each put together a list of 15 movies like that. And week by week, we're just going to take turns, and we're literally going to, draw out of a hat or spin a wheel and let fate decide what movie we pick for the next week. and we're going to alternate between Brad's list and my list, not knowing what's coming next. I think that's honestly kind of what I'm most looking forward to, Brad, if I'm being honest.
Honestly, at this point, I just want to see like the chore wheel from The Office, where we just have all the movies on a like really fancy, sparkly wheel.
And then like a mini wheel for something else, right?
Yes, obviously, of course.
So if you are very good at math, unlike Brad or myself, you may have tabulated 15 plus 15 comes out to 30, but Film and Whiskey, you normally do 32 movies a season. What's going on here? Well, we established this pattern way back in season 2 that we were going to start watching 2 Harry Potter movies for the 4 seasons after that until we hit all 8 of them. And we've gotten through 5 and 6, but that means we still have 7 and 8 to watch here. And so we can't break the pattern now. So we're going to watch both of those Harry Potter movies, and we're actually going to bookend the season with them to kind of spread them out a little bit. We're going to kick off season 5 with Deathly Hallows Part 1 on November 1st. And then way down the line, episode 32, we're going to watch Deathly Hallows Part 2.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Bob, I think that in all reality, the Harry Potter movies, while I wouldn't necessarily not call them classic films, I don't know if they would fit on many classic films podcasts. So it kind of felt like they've already been fitting into season 5 even before we hit season 5.
Before we even knew what season 5 was going to be.
That's right. Yeah, it was already making sense that the Harry Potter films would get on there because if we had never watched any Harry Potter films, I would bet you any money that you and I would probably both pick at least one to put into this season.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey, man, I feel like we've delayed this long enough. I think we should kind of get into our list of movies. Now, again, I can't tell you all when we're actually going to get around to any of these movies because it's going to be completely by chance. But what we can do is reveal our list of 15 apiece. Brad, do you want to go first, or do you think I should go first?
Yeah, I'll throw my list down.
Yeah, let's hear. Just name all 15 movies, and then we'll kind of do a little deep dive on which ones we find most intriguing here.
All right. My first movie is Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Second, we have Secondhand Lions. And then we have Sherlock Holmes, Season 2, Episode 3, The Reichenbach Fall. We have The Day the Earth Stood Still from 1951, because that's the only good one. We have To Catch a Thief, Pride and Prejudice, Charade, which is long awaited on this podcast, Mission Impossible 3, Edge of Tomorrow, Arrival, Spider-Man from 2002, Tangled, About Time, The Bourne Identity, and one of the greatest classics of all time, Rocky IV.
Rocky IV. I feel like you absolutely flew through those. So I'm going to call attention to a few of the ones that stand out to me. I can see your list here. We have a shared Google Doc. I can see your little cursor just waving hello to me, Brad. So what interests me are the number of like sequels here without their predecessors. So we are doing Spider-Man 1 as opposed to Spider-Man 2, but we're doing Mission Impossible 3. We are doing Rocky 4. We're doing Star Wars Episode 3. Brad, can you tell me, like, what is it about those sequels in particular that make you want to talk about them as opposed to maybe the first chapter in any of those stories?
Honestly, I think Rocky IV just came out of the sense of like, that is the most well-known of the Rockies. And while I genuinely do not think it is the best Rocky, I just love that movie. I think Ivan Drago is one of the greatest villains in cinematic history. And so I wanted to watch that and experience it with you, Bob. I think that Mission Impossible 3, I genuinely just wanted to have one of the Mission Impossible movies in this list. Because the Mission Impossible franchise is probably one of my favorite, just like pure action series of all time.
100%.
I just absolutely love Mission Impossible. And I think that Mission Impossible 3 or 5 is my favorite.
Okay.
And I couldn't really pick, but I really love 3 a lot. So I threw that one on.
Did you see Fallout?
Yeah, I've seen all of them.
Wow. And Fallout is not in your top like 2?
I don't know if it is.
Oh, interesting.
It's really, really good. I like, because 5 is the one where he climbs the tower in Dubai, right?
No, that's 4. That's Ghost Protocol.
Oh, that's 4. Maybe Ghost Protocol might be one of my
5 was the one that I
favorites.
felt like of the more recent ones was the most forgettable. Like I don't remember much of what happened in 5. And then
maybe
6
it was Fallout that I really liked.
Yeah. Anyway,
Nah.
I'm looking forward to talking about number 3 because that was the one that J.J. Abrams directed. It had Philip Seymour Hoffman as the villain, which honestly, I think that I haven't seen it in years and years. I loved that movie when I first saw it. And I have a feeling, Brad, that seeing where J.J. Abrams has gone with his kind of directorial decisions now and knowing that like in situations where he doesn't have great actors to kind of bail him out, I have a feeling that when we go back and revisit this movie, we're going to really see that Philip Seymour Hoffman elevates that movie kind of in spite of what J.J. Abrams is doing. That's my hot take. That's my theory and my prediction. But I'm anxious to revisit it because it's been a long, long time for me.
Yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun. And I saved the best movie for last. I know for a fact that I would never get you to watch all the prequels on this podcast. But if I get a say in any amount of movies on this podcast, I will make you sit down and watch The Revenge of the Sith. I think it's the best of the prequels, not by a long shot the way some people might think, but I love Revenge of the Sith. I sit there every single time watching it, like hoping that Anakin won't turn to the dark side this time. And I think that's the sign of a great movie that you can watch over and over and over again. So
once again, man,
I'm pumped for it, man.
Once again, I have to say, like, this is one of those areas where there's somebody working overtime to elevate a movie. And I have a feeling that if you tried to watch this movie without John Williams' music, it would utterly fail. Like, I just rewatched this like within the last year, and I love Revenge of the Sith. Like, I love it. However, there is just something about like the vocalization when you have Anakin kind of rising up into the frame as Darth Vader for the first time, and like the whole tragedy is complete at that point. What John Williams does with the score of that movie is the real MVP of that movie for me.
Yeah, a lot of people point to Duel of the Fates as like their favorite Star Wars song, and I'm not far off from that. I love it. But honestly, the music for the fight sequence in episode 3, I think is just stellar. I think it's the most emotional of any of the fight music he makes. And you're right. When he is transformed into Darth Vader, it is one of the most crushing moments in movie history for me. And I'm excited to watch it again.
All right, I have a couple more observations, and then we'll take a break and try this Umiki. But, first of all, I noticed that your favorite film of all time, Secondhand Lions, is on this list. I don't think we should say anything else. I want to wait for that pod, because...
Yeah, I'm pretty jazzed.
Yeah, man. I do want you to talk about the fact that we picked an episode of the TV series Sherlock to be the first ever TV representative on the Film and Whiskey podcast. Now, like, it's essentially a movie. Like, it's an hour and a half long, but... if you want to get technical about it, it's an hour and a half long episode of TV. So, Brad, like, why this? Why this episode? Why is this the representative of TV? And why did you choose this over more conventional kind of movies, I guess?
For me, I just wanted to be a pain in the butt for you. That's a constant.
Nailed it.
But B, for me, I think that Sherlock represents the best that television can offer. Like, I have not seen many television series that are as gripping, are as engaging, that the cinematography is as beautiful as it is. Like, there's just not many television shows out there that do it as well as Sherlock did. And I think that the other thing for me that I genuinely love about Sherlock is how limited it was. I think one of the reasons it was such a successful television series is that they didn't try to do it all. They didn't try to stretch it out over like 9 seasons. They didn't try to do 10 episodes a season. They made every single episode feel unique and special and interesting. And I just think it is genuinely some of the best television ever created. And so for me, I want to make sure that our audience is appreciating art outside of the movie realm. And obviously everybody's seen Sherlock, but if you haven't, make sure you watch up to this episode before you listen, because, I mean, Bob, I know you're going to agree with me. It is some of the best damn TV you'll ever see.
Oh, this was one of the most like holy shit moments ever in TV for me. It's up there with certain moments of season 4 of Breaking Bad with, fill in the blank here, the ending of The Sopranos, like whatever you want to fill in here. This is a great, great episode of TV, and I can't wait to talk about it, Brad. All right, one more observation, and that is if there's one movie that we have talked about Brad getting on this show, even more than Secondhand Lions, it is the Stanley Donen directed Audrey Hepburn, Cary Grant film Charade. Now, this is a movie I have never seen, have always wanted to, and have honestly just been kind of holding out at this point until we got around to it on the show. Brad, I have a little bit of a surprise for you, my friend, and that is that we reached out to friend of show, and we're huge fanboys of him, Patrick H. Willems, and we asked him to come back on the show again and do a regular episode with us. Patrick has agreed to do the episode, and he specifically said that the movie that he wanted to talk to us about was Charade.
No.
Yeah, dude.
Bro!
How excited are you right now?
Yes!
I can't wait for that, man.
Dude, that's one of the best presents you could ever get me, Bob.
I was going to say happy birthday, but I literally had nothing to do with this falling into place the way it did, but I'll take the credit.
Well, let's just say this. Me and Patrick H, we got the same taste, and it is pretty daggone good.
All right, man. Hey, let's press pause here. Let's try this Umiki Japanese whiskey. What do you say?
Let's get to it.
All right, so the first whiskey we're trying today is Umiki Japanese whiskey. Now, Brad, there is a lot of lore or marketing surrounding this brand. It kind of, I don't want to say it got grandfathered in, but I think they launched the brand before these new regulations hit the Japanese whiskey industry. We talked a little bit about that last season on a bonus episode, but essentially they're kind of cracking down on what can and cannot be called Japanese whiskey now. This one kind of falls under that really nebulous umbrella where, like, we don't exactly know who the distiller is. It's kind of like Scotch in that way, where you can source things from multiple distillers. It's undisclosed distillery. It's produced by a brand called Yoshino Spirits. We don't know the mash bill. We know that it's a blended whiskey, so it's a blend of malt whiskeys and grain whiskeys. The grain whiskey is imported from somewhere outside of Japan, but because they do the blending in Japan, it can be called Japanese whiskey. Or at least it could. What they're like really leaning into in the marketing is that they say that they like bring it down to proof with pure ocean water that is desalinated. So they take the salt out of the water, but then I don't know how you can call it pure ocean water if you're already doing something to it. Like, do you know what I'm saying? I'm a little iffy on the story here, but
I think it's because you wouldn't want pure ocean water.
Says you, man.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you've really gotten into the salty scotches lately, but I kind of doubt it.
Yeah, a little bit. So at the end of the day, though, like we've said this a ton on this podcast, I understand that companies kind of, create lore behind their brands to sell stuff. I don't really care about your marketing. I don't care if it's even potentially a little misleading. If what's in the bottle is really good, that's what we care about here. So let's try this Umiki whiskey. Brad, I think this is only our third Japanese whiskey. It might be our fourth, but I remember at least 2 of them we've tried before. This one clocks in at 92 proof, no age statement, and the MSRP on this is $44.99. So just as we go into tasting it, $45, pretty well in the price range of other kind of entry-level Japanese whiskeys. Brad, what are you picking up here on the nose, on the taste, on the finish?
Yeah, Bob, it honestly has a really nice, pleasantly sweet nose. For me, I'm getting like a lot of like kind of a thick honey, bits of spearmint, a little bit of pine. I really like this nose a lot. It's impressive.
Honey and pine are great notes on this, man. It's really bright. I think there's a little bit of apple here too, like a green apple, to go with that pininess. So it doesn't tip into being like, oh, this might be a little too herbal for me. It has a little bit of fruit underlying that. I'm going to give it a sip. I know you've tried it already. What do you think of the taste, Brad?
Man, Bob, it's a roller coaster. I think it loses a lot of the sweetness from the nose. It's almost like a little bit savory. There's like bits of licorice. The pine really comes through strongly. to me, I think it's a struggle because it really lost any bit of honey that I was getting on the nose. And that's a little bit sad to me because I liked that.
Oh, see, I disagree. I think that there is that kind of honey sweet to it throughout. And it just kind of, we know that Japanese whiskey is very similar to Scotch in the flavor profile. It just kind of becomes an easy drinking Scotch to me at that point. But you're right that it is a little more kind of prickly. We had some Scotches on the podcast last season, Brad, that were from the Highland region. And I think I just kind of decided or was it Speyside? I think it was Speyside. Yeah. And I was like, I just don't think these have a lot of character to them. They're very bland and drinkable, but when I drink something like this is kind of what I wish was there. Like, if you're just going to have a blandly sweet, Scotchy profile, at least hit me with a little bit of that prickliness. And that's what's coming through for me.
Yeah, and then when you kind of get into the finish, I feel like I'm getting a little bit of like toffee on the finish. It's kind of salty, and then that pine kind of comes back through. It's got a nice woody finish to it. Honestly, it's a really solid whiskey. I like the nose. I like the finish. The palate is a little iffy for me. If I was scoring this out of 50, knowing that it's a $45 bottle of Japanese whiskey, I think that's a fair price for what you're getting here, especially when you're considering how far it has to travel to get to us. So yeah, it's a fair priced whiskey. I'd probably give it like a 30 to a 32 out of 50.
I think I'd be a little bit higher than you on this. I think what I'm actually drinking here is probably closer to a 35 out of 50. And then when you factor in the value, I think this is actually a pretty phenomenal value, Brad. The least expensive Japanese whiskey you can get in Ohio is, I think, the Suntory Toki, which is a really entry level, and that's like $40. So this is really not much more expensive than that at all. I think it has a lot of character to it. Like, I would probably be in like the 37 range on this one. I like this a lot.
Yeah, but speaking of things that I won't like a lot, let's get to your half of the movie list.
All right, man, let's get to it. All right, so we have heard Brad's 15 movies. One thing that we really didn't talk about a lot, Brad, was like your motivation behind why you picked what you picked. Like, were there any that were childhood favorites, or was it mostly just, hey, I want to watch these movies again, and this gives me a good excuse to do it?
I think it was a mixture of that. A lot of the older movies that you see on the list are movies I grew up with. The Day the Earth Stood Still, To Catch a Thief, Charade. Like, those are movies that I remember watching with my dad and just loving as a kid. So those are some examples. But other than that, it's genuinely just a mix of like movies that I would consider kind of educated me in film.
Yeah.
Like, these are the movies that really impacted the way I watch movies, the way I enjoy movies. And so you'll see a smattering. Most of the movies are probably from the early to late 2000s, if not into the teens a little bit. So, yeah, I think it's movies that were formative for me that I still love.
Yeah. When I look at my list, I actually don't see any that were kind of like childhood favorites. I see a couple from when I was a teenager that I'm going to talk about, but most of them are very recent, like within the last few years. And I think it's because I kind of wanted to take this opportunity to present a list of movies that would be like my movie recommendations. Movies that I really was into that either a lot of people didn't talk about, or I just haven't really had the chance to share these movies with people. And even though I put together the list that we go off of every season, Brad, most of those are movies that are very heavily agreed upon as, quote unquote, films you should see. And these ones may not fall into that category for like the general film going populace, but I'm excited to talk about them. So I'm going to break them down here. I think my list is in alphabetical order. Here it goes. We've got the 2014 film Chef, the 2005 Cameron Crowe movie Elizabethtown, the 2007 Ben Affleck directed Gone Baby Gone, 2005's Good Night and Good Luck. We've got Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. We've got the Taika Waititi film Hunt for the Wilder People, Barry Jenkins' If Beale Street Could Talk, the recent Scarlett Johansson movie Marriage Story, the Scott Cooper directed Out of the Furnace. We've got my favorite comedy of the 21st century, School of Rock, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, Steven Spielberg's The Terminal, the George Clooney starring film Up in the Air, and the Charlize Theron starring film young adult. That's my 15.
Here's my thoughts.
All right.
There's 4 movies on here I've never heard of.
Boom.
Kind
Kind of par for the course, if we're being honest, with our season list.
Up in the Air is one of my favorite movies.
I love that movie, man. I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, I think we might have been talking about the list because I think that was going to make my list as well. Up in the Air is so good. Other than that, I'm really excited for Signs. I have never seen it, knowing that I should. I know, dude.
Legit might be Shyamalan's best movie. And pretty sure I gave Sixth Sense 10 out of 10.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm excited for that. Really confused about Guardians 2. Tell me about that choice.
Guardians 2 is both my favorite and I think the best movie in the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I say that as a guy who gave the first Guardians like a 6. I did not really care. I thought the first Guardians, like, it tried to be goofy and it tried to be goofy at the wrong times. I thought the second one, the humor was really balanced, but they really, really lean into the family dynamic that this group of people has set up. And they do it in a way that feels earned and there's emotional payoff. And I think it's one of the very few Marvel movies that has the balls to be emotional. And that's something that most Marvel movies don't make time for. I'm really excited to talk about it because I think that, if I'm being honest with you, like, that's a movie that I teared up at the end and was one of the few Marvel movies to make me do that without, killing off a main character.
Man, that's just fascinating to me. I remember watching that when it came out on Netflix at some point and thinking to myself, man, this is like a sign of where like Marvel is just declining and why I don't watch the Marvel movies anymore.
Wow. Yeah, I could not disagree more strongly. But I guess we're going to talk about it on the episode, man.
Yeah, I was just curious about that one.
You know what's funny, though? I feel like there is a point where everyone kind of hit that, no matter what the movie was. For me, I think it was around the time of like Doctor Strange. And I didn't think Doctor Strange was a bad movie, but it was one of the first times where I was like, oh, every single one of these movies follows the exact same formula, don't they? And we're never going to get anything new. Like, regardless of if the storyline is different or if the visuals look different, it's the same thing. It's the same beats every movie. So, I'm with you in that, like, I had that same experience, but it definitely didn't happen for Guardians 2.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was the same but slightly different. I had stopped watching them at Winter Soldier. I remember watching Winter Soldier in theaters. I had seen every single Marvel movie in theaters up until that point. And I remember walking out of Winter Soldier and being like, man, that was like really solid. That was good. And then I had zero desire to see a single Marvel movie again since then. And like, it was like 2 or 3 years later, I sat down on Netflix. I was like, yeah, I like the first Guardians. I'll try the second one. And it was more of like a confirmation for me of like, yeah, I haven't really missed anything. So I am curious to go back and see it again. I'm not opposed to watching it again. It'll be fun to go back and check it out.
I will say my list is a combination of movies that I feel very passionately about and a number of movies that I am totally okay with going back to and not even liking again. Like, I remember really digging The Terminal when I was in high school. I loved that movie. And I actually just went back to it a few months ago and watched it. And I was like, oh, not great. Not a great movie.
But one that I'm going to put on this list.
Yeah, well, because I just thought that it's one of those movies that, like, when was the last time you ever heard anybody talk about The Terminal? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
all the movies surrounding it in Spielberg's catalog get talked about. And The Terminal is kind of looked at as, oh, this was a big dip for him. And I actually don't think it's not that bad. And I think there are moments of it that I really love. I think the John Williams score is incredible. So I'm looking forward to talking about movies like that, where I also still fall on, this is not a 10 out of 10, and I'm okay admitting that,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned my boy John Williams, and I'm in. So you just piqued my interest. It just jumped about 27% now that I know John Williams scored it.
All the way from 0 to 27.
That's right. Speaking of other movies I'm not super interested in, I am just claiming it now. I think I'm going to give School of Rock like a 7 out of 10.
I understand where you're coming from. I would encourage you to pay attention to like the filmmaking happening while you watch it. Because I know you've seen it. I know you're familiar with like the beats of the plot. I think it's one of those movies that you're like, wow, they really didn't have to do this as professionally as they did and as legitimately as they did. I actually just watched an interview with Jack Black where he talked about how having Richard Linklater as the director, this is not what comedies in the mid 2000s were doing. Like they looked like glorified TV show episodes. And I think if you go into it kind of appreciating or at least being open to appreciating the filmmaking, I think you're actually going to appreciate the movie as a whole a lot more.
I have a question. Do you know any other movies in the same era, so like within the same 3 or 4 years of School of Rock, that also was a comedy that featured a child cast? Is there anything like that? Am I just like searching for something?
Wasn't there a movie called Role Models with the guy that played Stifler? And
yeah,
it was like a kind of raunchy movie, but that had a bunch of kids in it. There was one, I think there was one with Rainn Wilson called The Rocker.
Okay.
And I think that had kids in it too. I'm sure there was a few.
I guess I'm just wondering, because I'm just curious of like looking at another film with a child cast from the same-ish era to really see if School of Rock like really does stand out in the way that you say it does. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like compare and contrast a little bit.
We'll find out, man.
One might even say that I'd be doing research.
What's that? All right, man. Hey, we have one more whiskey to try. Let's take a sip of this Traverse City, and then we'll come back to talking about these movies. What do you say?
Let's get to it.
All right, so now we are trying Traverse City Whiskey Company Michigan Apple. This is a straight bourbon that's infused with Michigan apples and natural flavor. So yeah, this is a flavored whiskey. However, it's 80 proof. Usually when you have flavored whiskeys, it's like 30 proof. This is like legitimately, that's why they can put the word bourbon on here, because of the proof that it's bottled at. Now, Traverse City sources its whiskey. I think we talked about that before on our prior Traverse City episodes. And we drank their cherry-flavored whiskey, which was freaking delicious. Like, out of this world good. I'm excited to try this apple one, Brad.
Yeah, I am curious. When it says infused with apples, does that mean that they just, like, cut up some Michigan apples and throw them in the barrel as it ages? Like, what exactly does that mean?
I would assume they probably do vat it with apples.
Right. So at that point, I don't even know if I'd call it a flavored whiskey. Like, to me, this is almost like a finished whiskey. Like, you know, some people finish their whiskeys in a formerly used wine barrel, and they are finishing this whiskey with some apples in it. And I think that really comes through for me on the nose, because to me, it really just has this beautiful, crisp green apple nose with like hints of caramel like on the underside. That's just beautiful.
Yeah, this really is like one of those caramel apple lollipops that you get around Halloween time. There's a lot of cinnamon on this as well for me. Like, it doesn't smell like an apple pie. It definitely stays in that tart green apple, kind of fresh apple realm. But the nose is really beautiful, Brad.
Yeah, it really does remind me of those like lollipops that had like crystallized, or not crystallized, like solidified caramel around like the sour green center.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it, man. You're right.
Yeah, and it's kind of there on the taste too. I will say, like, I think if we can find a way to divide out the bourbon flavor from the apple flavor on this, the bourbony part of this is kind of a letdown. Like, it's just you get some oak, but you don't get a lot of vanilla or caramel or even cinnamon flavors on this. The apple flavor is really coming through, and I like it a lot, but I do wish it was balanced out with kind of a more well-rounded bourbon, if that makes sense.
I don't know, man. I personally feel like this is the best version of I don't know. I guess maybe I'm jumping back into calling this a flavored whiskey when it's more just infused, but out of any whiskey that has a really unique, weird gimmick to it, and I say that lovingly, this is one of the best.
So, Brad, where do you think you'd fall on this one if you were scoring it out of 50?
Yeah, Bob. So if I'm looking to score this out of 50, it only costs $30 in the state of Ohio. And if I'm being honest, I think $30 is a great price for this. You know, so many craft distilleries would make something like this, and it would be at least $45 or $50. So honestly, seeing the price, I'm actually pretty impressed with this bottle of whiskey, Bob. I'd probably end up at like a 35, 36 out of 50.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, if you just like inverted our scores from the Umiki, I think that's where we'd land. This is really good. I don't think it's quite as good as the cherry one was, but for a nice fall day like today in Ohio, man, this thing really hits the spot.
Yeah, Bob, I'm really, really pumped about what they're doing up at Traverse City. Everything they've sent us is just really, really solid. So all I got to say is this, man, I'm really excited for season 5. I know that my side of the list is phenomenal. We'll see about yours. I'm sure it'll be above average. It'll be decent. But this is just going to be a fun season, man. I'm really excited to get into it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I'm glad that, like, we've built up an audience now who is willing to hear us talk about any movie, because I don't think we could have done this in season 2. Like, listenership would have really fallen off. But I'm excited to look at some movies that people wouldn't necessarily expect to see on a classic movie podcast. And especially because, for the most part, these are movies that mean a lot to us.
Yeah, like I said, the 15 movies that I chose are just a mixture of my childhood favorites and movies that really influenced how I watch movies. And if I'm being honest, the childhood favorites, the reason I still remember them are because they shaped the way I watch movies. So it'll be a fun season. And if we're being honest here, we're going to drink a lot of really great whiskey while we're at it. So literally nothing could go wrong.
That's what you say. So once again, we want to say thank you to Umiki and to Traverse City for these samples. And Brad, thank you to you for going along on this ride with me. Folks, we will see you on November 1st for the start of season 5. But until then, I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And we'll see you next time.